Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So for the third time in my life, I find myself wanting to get the fuck out of the United States. I first came up with the idea of getting the fuck out of the United States when I was working on my PhD. I was working on a field of research called computational social choice theory, but my real passion was in another math problem called Ramsey theory. But there was no money involved in it, and I would daydream about the idea of someday retiring to devote all my time to Ramsey theory. And I knew I couldn't save up to retire by the time I graduated with my PhD. So I came up with an idea. Maybe I could move to a country where the cost of living is a whole lot less and retire there to work on Ramsey theory. So I needed to marry somebody for her citizenship. And then I met a girl from a country that was a little bit lower cost than the United States. Wouldn't say third world country. And I got really excited about that. My family didn't approve of her, unfortunately. And also I later learned she wanted children, and I wasn't ready to have children, and plus I wouldn't be able to retire then, so that didn't work. But I really, really wanted to leave the United States. I still love Ramsey theory, but nowadays I'm happy to be able to spend some time with it. I don't need to devote all of my time to it. Now, 2 years ago, we had a problem. A lot of there was a threat that if we didn't take this pharmaceutical drug, that we might be banned from going to our workplaces or even go out to a restaurant. And so once again, I found myself wanting to leave the country. Now, I made a joke out of the mandate, though. So at the time, instead of taking the drug, you could also take a test within 3 days of going to your favorite restaurant or whatever. But the problem is that the test would often take 4 or 5 days to turn around. And then I did a little bit more reading and discovered there was a religious exemption. And I decided to write my own exemption. And I called my religion the SOM clan. And I said that we were against anything developed or associated with anybody who was married. And because Tony Fauci is happily married, against this stuff. And I went to a restaurant and showed my little certificate to the host, and she looked at it. She said, okay, well, unfortunately, all of our waitresses, I think they're all married. And I said, that's all right. You guys get a pass from that. And I got to eat at the restaurant anyway. Fortunately, they got rid of the mandate within a few months, but I really had fun with it when it was around. And eventually the test turned around a lot faster than 4 or 5 days anyhow, so that was good. Now this past week, I once again find myself wanting to leave the country. What had happened was, I was on vacation in Grants, New Mexico, and when I sat down to eat, I found that for the first time in many, many months, I was eating without having to think in the background what time it was. Because oftentimes when I'm eating, I'm worried about, do I have enough time to get to my next client? You know, am I going to have, am I going to run into traffic on my way to the client? Or if it's remote work, am I going to run into Wi-Fi troubles and have to look for Wi-Fi, right? At my apartment, you can't really rely on Wi-Fi always being there. Sometimes it's an emergency. I got to go out to look for a Starbucks and hope that it's not too noisy and all that. And so in the middle of what should be my lunch break, I'm already consumed about what time it is. And I found myself for the first time in a year probably sitting down to eat with no concept of what time it is or what place I'm at. And when I say it's the first time in years that I didn't have to think about that, I literally mean it. And it was very upsetting, especially in light of where I was working. I've since rage quit that job because I found another job. But I was working in you can think of it as an office suite. We have a bathroom, we don't have a kitchenette, and I often have gaps of an hour, 90 minutes And it's not really conducive to taking a lunch break there. You heat up something in the microwave in your Tupperware, and then you got to go to the bathroom to wash it. Oftentimes there isn't even enough time to run to the bathroom to wash everything. Students are arriving early, and I get back to my work a mess, leaving the break room a mess, and it was just undignified. Let's say that. Not to mention, as I'm eating, I'm thinking about what time it is and where I am and what I have to be doing and all that. And then sometimes during my break, you know, it's my break, so I sometimes want to watch the Peter Shit show or whatever. And you got students who are insanely curious. They want to come over and watch with you, and then they ask you, how much gold do you have? And it just gets too personal. My boss doesn't like it when I share these things with the students. What are you going to do? You got a student who is bullying you and won't leave you alone until you answer them. And it just became very indignified, if you will. And then I remembered when I was in Poland, I don't seem to remember the locals there having a problem. They go out to lunch and spend an hour at the restaurant, and so it made me want to leave the country again. So first it was because I wanted to retire to work on a math problem, and then it was because I didn't want to take this mandated pharmaceutical drug, and now it's because of work-life balance issues. Anyways, the bottom line is America sucks.